Alrighty, so our basic plan lately was to jump tracks from America and to switch over to England and check out what was going on with their TV. And last week we watched that weird, the Baird mechanical television man with the flower in his mouth. So that was.
Oh, yes. God, I couldn't even remember. That was so bad. I just washed that out of my brain. I didn't even want it. Yeah, early TV.
Yeah, which again, just historically significant. Certainly not entertaining. Not even, not even within a mile of
Technically
entertaining.
interesting from a technical standpoint, but as far as content, blah.
So that's what's weird with this is, yeah, every week I feel like I'm sort of jumping off the cliff and just hoping I find something. Because, like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like there's not a central hub or somewhere to go. Where I feel like this is such an obvious thing to ask. Like, what are the early shows that still exist? What do we got?
That are good.
Yeah, or even just at all. Like, it's one of these things, like, if there is someone who has already done all the work and put all this stuff together somewhere, I don't know where it is. I can't find it. Which is kind of interesting about this, where I feel like this is sort of the future of education, right? Of like, now that we have the internet and all this stuff's there, it's like you got to be the student and the teacher at the same time. Like, you decide what you're interested in, then you've got to go research it yourself, and you got to go find the things. So I don't know, it's just weird. It's a weird process where every week I really don't know what's going to happen or what's going to come up or where things are going to be.
Somebody already did this research in order to put it on the internet.
Yeah, it's just not curated in any way.
It's not cataloged.
Yeah, it's just like, so what I did this week, for instance, is instead of YouTube, because BBC is less, it's a little more obscure, so I went to archive.org, which is just a site where you can just archive shit. You know, it's just an archive of everything, again, like theoretically, but some stuff's there, some stuff isn't, who knows, right? And you can do the search of like, okay, I'll put it to stuff from the BBC, and you get 30,000 things. So it's like, okay, let's cut it down to the dawn of time to like 1950, and you get still way too many things. And I was looking through it, and it's like a lot of gramophones and stuff, or like old records that they played on the BBC on radio and stuff. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but that's not what we're looking for. So I searched deeper, and I'm like, okay, I can uncheck audio, just do video, then see what comes up. And, you know, I'm just like filtering down and trying to figure out what was going on. But I did figure out some kind of interesting stuff. So that thing we watched, you know, that was from 1930, recreated in the 60s, but that's where we left off. In 1937, they had the first major outdoor broadcast. It was the coronation of King George. And at that point, in 1937, about...
37, 36, 37, yeah, King George VI, yeah.
And about 9,000 TV sets were sold in the UK at this point. So, like, we're always pontificating about how many...
Were they sold just so people could watch the coronation, or were they sets that people already had?
I mean, yeah, I don't know how much else was going on. Again, like, the information is so scant and sort of hard to find. That was the major thing, but there must have been other stuff on TV. I assume that they're broadcasting on these 9,000 TV sets. But here's one thing. In 1938, this was the earliest actual file I could find. Like how that other one was a recreation from 1930. This thing, we'll just watch it real quick. It's only a couple minutes long. This is the first BBC television transmission that crossed the ocean and was received in New York. It's only 3 minutes, but let's just watch that real quick. That's not the thing for this week, but that's just a thing that I found. So I'm sure this will be a garbled mess, but let's give it a look.
Maybe not, though. November 1938. Does it have audio?
I'm just making sure the sound's on. I think it is, though, yeah, so maybe it doesn't have sound.
Okay, we see a man and a woman. Very, very shaky.
Yeah, it kind of looks like in the old pay-per-view channels when it was scrambled, when you didn't pay to get the thing. And I guess that's the thing, too, is like, I'm thinking how this TV stuff seems so primitive considering that films existed and movie theaters existed. But I guess the difference is, like, that's a gigantic building with a huge projector. This is just a little box. So yeah, this is all pretty garbled, but I guess the fact that this is being transmitted across the Atlantic Ocean is pretty cool.
A man, and it looks like the way his hair is, it looks like a scene from something in the 1700s or something.
Stuff, yeah. So again, I guess that's just more interesting that it
Yeah.
exists more than for any content because it's just some scrambled images. But so that's where things were at in 1938.
November 1938.
So then by 1939, there were 20,000 TV sets in Britain. So we're getting there. However, this is one of these things that this is like the main thing I learned this week, that it seems pretty evident, I guess, now that I know it, but it's one of these things you don't know it till you know it. So we've got all this early 30s weird malarkey going on of different TV shit. And then the other stuff we watched was all late 40s to 1950 or whatever. So there's a distinct gap there. And it's like,
war.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder what happened there.
World War II was happening.
So yeah, what happened is that the British TV service, the BBC, shut down at the advent of World War II, and it didn't come back till 1946. So that's why there's nothing in there.
Okay.
It was just straight up gone. So that's what I found for this week is BBC television reopened, and then what this thing is, it's called, how last week's thing was really short. This one's a little longer. I think it's 40 minutes maybe. If I understand right, I was a little unclear about what this was because, again, archive.org is just not well organized. Like even the thing we just watched, it's just a depository of everything that is around, but it's not well curated or explained. I believe what this is after BBC television had been reopened for a year, so in 1947, this was like a retrospective that they aired of like their first year back. Let's take a look back at the year that has just transpired of BBC back on a thing. So if I'm understanding right, that's what this is. It's like a thing the BBC TV made in 1947 to just celebrate that TV is back. So that's, I guess, what we're going to watch and see what that's like.
Okay.
And and it's just, again, one of those things that, never, of course, like what would, besides broadcasting things about the war maybe, which I guess they just did through radio.
Big newsreel stuff was going on at the time. Like you'd see it in the movie theater, you'd go and it was
Right.
Americans take Hiroshima or whatever, and then you'd see a lot of film about it, but it was filmed for movie theater, not for TV.
Yeah, because we did watch some of that stuff earlier, and yeah, that was all American stuff, so I'm not sure how much they were doing on the British side, but again, yeah, maybe it was movie theaters. But yeah, apparently they just weren't using TV, because I guess it would be weird while a war is going on.
Well, there was, not TV again, but there was a lot of that kind of movie-type stuff of Britain in the war, and it was done by British guys, because there's scenes where the King and the Queen are walking among the rubble of certain areas of London that had been bombed, and they bombed the castle, and they have scenes of that, and so there was a lot of that stuff going on. But that's where the emphasis was, as opposed to producing trivial stuff like for TV. Come on, they were fighting a war.
Yeah, it'd be weird to have game shows and random junk on TV.
Whereas the States were not they were not involved in the war as such. Like they were not under attack, other than Pearl Harbor. But the American continent itself was not attacked the way Britain was, being bombed from left and center. But
well, that's what's interesting too about this. Like all this stuff, seems to be film reel stuff. So maybe this like 20,000 TVs, it's a good start. But if you do need to send information to people, either use the radio, or it's weird that at that time it probably was more people had access to movie theaters than they did TVs.
Yeah, movie theater and radio. Yeah, would be the thing.
So yeah, they just straight up shut it down, which like I never thought about it, but it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, well let's see what they did in 1947 to kind of recap.
Yeah, let's
1946. And the video, I think, should be much better because by that time the Americans had really pushed along with television.
But yeah, if anyone's curious, this was on archive.org. It's called BBC First Year Flashbacks from December 31st, 1946. So right at the end of the year, they're like, let's have our little New Year's recap.
First Year Flashbacks.
So, with the opening of the Parliament, which will guide our destinies through 1947, we close this television and film unit scrapbook for 1946. In the years to come, it may be interesting to look through it again. Meanwhile, we put it in our bookcase, and we shall hope to add another volume each new year.
we go. I mean, I guess we're fulfilling their desire that people in the future, right? Check it out.
Yeah, here we are. 70 years later, about.
So I guess I'd say that's basically similar to those newsreels we watched before, except just much slower. Just
Yeah.
a slower paced newsreel.
Yeah, and made for TV as opposed to the movies.
Right.
Interesting, though.
Yeah, I'm glad we watched that. And of course, the main thing we noticed is like when they would dip into America was having a much more fun time. I wonder if, because like especially ending with Remembrance Day and Parliament opening and stuff, maybe there was a sense that TV was still potentially a frivolous thing to be doing, so they wanted to just like, let's take it serious so no one questions why we're doing this. Like, let's make it seem important, gravitas and stuff.
They probably did, and you have to realize too that this was only 1 year after, actually not even a year. 1946 would only be 6 months.
Yeah.
The beginning. Well, when they were filming this, it was 1947, almost 47. So like almost a year, half a year to a year. They had just finished a war. They were blasted with the war, and there probably were a bunch of them too that had this attitude about the Americans that they were, just like saucy young things, kind of showing off all the time, and so that's what they showed in that little part of the American contemporary Americans.
Yeah, maybe that was a bit deliberate because when they showed the American side, here's what's happening in America. It was like ridiculously frivolous, like clowns and it just like
girls in bathing suits and queens on floats and yachts. Everybody having a yacht and racing around in the harbor in their yachts. Floats and parades and clowns and balloons and
even something that started off a little legit, like the Olympic style divers. Quickly that turned into just people like diving, holding onto a parasol, like just doing goofy stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that was. And then we were making fun of how ludicrously dour and downbeat and fatalistic the British people were, but then they would kind of toss in a reference to food shortages and show bombed walls, and we're like, oh yeah, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they had been through all kinds of seriousness, and it is only a year, or not even a year, somewhere between 6 months and a year later. So you can't just presume that everything's back to hunky-dory happiness, which it is in the States. But then, I bet it was a little slap in the wrist for them. They weren't deeply involved in the war like the British were.
Yeah.
They weren't being bombed every night, and people having to run off to bomb shelters and hide out until the bombs went away, and cleaning up all the mess of debris and all that. So yeah, it probably was a little our neighbors across the way who are taking credit for winning World War II, and of course they're having a happy time. They didn't suffer. There's probably a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, because I'd say even the most kind of light and fluffy part of that was probably the ship. What was the ship? The Queen
Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth. And
being refurbished for passenger travel.
And even that part, they're showing, we're refurbishing it. Here's how nice it is now. You would never recognize it. Look at all these chefs making fancy stuff. But let's not forget, see, we've carved the names of the soldiers. We left those in. Don't forget. So, yeah, that was definitely the overall tone, which, I guess when you think about where it is in history, of course.
Yeah, like I always use that expression, that time in that place. If you put yourself back at that time in that place, you can't go and just say, Yahoo, party time, war's over.
Yeah.
But those Americans can.
But it still, though, even all that said, it still did come off almost like a comedy sketch at some points, like the part where it's like, let's take a look at London through the eyes of a returned soldier.
From Burma.
Yeah, so it's not actually like a soldier, it's just some writer who's like, let's take the most downbeat possible view of all the landmarks of London. And it's like, what a weird thing to put on TV.
And especially when he mentions Waterloo Bridge, which is a new structure.
That was the best
and
one.
And he says how lovely it is, but it'll get blackened and dirty and filthy just like everything else in this place.
Yeah.
Just give it time.
The futility of endeavor. Like, I guess we needed a bridge there, but
instead of saying, what a beautiful new structure, and it's so shiny and new.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the high water mark of just Like, you don't have to be this sad about, because like, yeah, it's one thing, be sad about ration shortages and bombings. Don't be sad about something that is not sad.
Yeah, here's a new bridge and here's the future.
Yeah.
And isn't this new bridge lovely? And this is really going to help with progress. No, it's like, no, it'll be dirty and black just like everything else here in no time.
I guess the other thing I liked, though, is because that was extra silly because it was so, they set that up. They deliberately wrote it and performed it and stuff. But I also liked the other side of it, that there wasn't really that much on TV yet. They didn't have that much material. So they had to kind of show some weird stuff, like when the king went to dedicate that new...
The library at Oxford.
And he broke the key in the lock by accident, and all these
People tried to shove their way in, couldn't get in, and then somebody just opened the door from the other side.
Yeah, there's all these cardinals and people waiting to get in, and someone just had to go open the door from the inside. So I did like that they showed that, of that's just like, well, that's what happens. That's life. So yeah, that brings us up through the 30s, and then why there was really very little TV in the 40s, and now TV's up and running again. So I don't know how much there will be from this period. I'm surprised that even exists still. It's weird that still exists.
And technically, it's amazing how, of course, America was working on TV all through the 40s.
Right.
But when you compared that initial film that we saw that was transmitted overseas in 1938, and all you could make out of a faint image of a woman, and then there was a couple there that looked like they were maybe in a play from the 1700s. You could vaguely make out their shapes, no audio. And yet here we are at 1947, because this is 1947 reviewing 1946. We've got excellent audio, clear video. Amazing in just that 5 or 6 year period.
And yeah, I'm not sure what else, like where the next thing I find. Again, just every week, it's like I just dive in and see what happens. So I don't know how much stuff I'll find, because really, to kind of bring us up to where things are more likely to exist is if we skip ahead to 1955, they put up a transmitter in Northern Ireland that brought a bunch of different transmitters, but that was the one that brought the amount of people in the UK who could receive BBC television up to 95%. So by 1955, basically everyone could get it. And then in 1958, they started using videotape recording. So before that, you needed to basically film a screen. To keep any of the shows from back in the day, you had to play them on a TV and then film them with a film camera, which almost no one did, so I don't know how much of any of that will exist. But once you get to 1958, they started videotape recording, and it's more likely things will exist from that point. That thing that we just watched, that seems like it's in some kind of a weird midway zone where they did play it on TV, but they kept calling it a television film. It was clearly filmed a movie.
And even though they called it television, it looked like the kind of thing that you would have seen in movie theaters. Yeah. Like that same kind of movie drone stuff where we saw history in the making and all that stuff during the war, and they showed all that stuff. This was very much that style of thing.
And now I guess then so I'm just going to see what I can find. The earlier the better, but it'll be basically, that's the line is pre-1958, post-1958. So we'll see. But I did just watch one more weird little thing before we go. This is from June 1959. This is the earliest surviving BBC weather newscast. So let's just throw that in real quick, because I happen to find it. Earliest surviving BBC weather forecast, June 1958. And this is the BBC themselves, bbc.com, posted this. It's 45 seconds long.
And here's the forecast for the whole of Scotland. Apart from some showers in the northeast, the evening will start dry.
Rather cloudy, mostly dry.
Later in the evening, and will spread eastwards over most of the country by tomorrow evening. In eastern districts, there will be sunny periods at first tomorrow, and the rain later will be only slight. But in western places, it will remain dull for most of the day.
It's just pieces of paper that they stuck on. That must be Fahrenheit, right? That certainly can't be.
Oh yeah, that's not Celsius. It's Fahrenheit.
So anyway, so there's that. Okay. Just another little thing. So yeah, we're just slowly piecing together. I guess that's what's kind of neat about this is, on the one hand, it's harder to find stuff than it is with American TV. But American TV seems a lot messier. This is a lot more defined. Like, we're definitely sort of piecing together early British TV. Like, here's what happened. And it's a lot easier when they just shut down for 7 years. It makes it pretty easy to delineate periods in television history. So, yeah, there we go. There's that. And next week I'll just see what I can find, see what I can get. Like they mentioned with that video scrapbook, they were going to make one every year, but I don't know if they did. I only saw that one. So who knows? I guess we'll see. Stay tuned for our continuing adventures.